Hello everybody, my name is Robert Goswitz. I served in the U.S. Army in Vietnam. I rose to the rank of Specialist 4th Class, but to tell my story, I need to take you back to 1971. In 1971, I graduated from Milton College. Milton College was a small liberal arts school founded on a bluff in southeastern Wisconsin and run on that principle for over 100 years. When I graduated from Milton, I lost my draft deferment. Now, a lot of people don't remember the draft or are too young to remember what the draft was. What happened was, because the Vietnam War needed so many soldiers, they weren't getting enough volunteers, so they had to put people in the Army, and they did that through the draft. So I was drafted into the U.S. Army in March of 1971. And I was kind of a reluctant recruit, and irony of ironies, I was assigned to the infantry. And I completed advanced infantry training at Fort Polk, Louisiana in August of 1971. And in early September of that same year, I landed in Cam Ranh Bay, South Vietnam, as an anxious infantry replacement. Now, one of the things that you need to know about the Army is anytime you arrive at a new station, the first thing they do is put you on a detail, because they're quite sure that if you sit around, you're going to get into trouble. And so there was a formation as soon as I got off the Flying Tiger Airlines flight. And I was put in a formation, and I was given a rake and told that I would be on a sand raking detail with 30 or 40 other guys. You might ask, why does sand need raking? And that was a question that the sergeant in charge of my detail was not interested in answering. He was just insistent that I was going to rake sand along with 30 or 40 other guys all day long. So that is what I did on my first day in country. I raked sand and got one heck of a sunburn. So eventually the day did pass, and we had evening chow. And of course, after evening chow, we had another formation. The sergeant says, "Every third man step forward." And I was number 3. And he says, "All you guys get on that truck over there. You are all going to be working on midnight KP. Now, KP means kitchen police. You are assigned to a mess hall, and you're helping the mess sergeant prepare a meal." So, also to take you back to 1971, Cam Ranh Bay is a huge base where all replacements are given their assignments. And because it's a war zone, the perimeter needs a lot of guards on defense. And one of the things they would do to keep the guards alert would be move them around from station to station and also serve them a midnight meal. So my assignment, my detail, was to help the mess sergeant on midnight chow prepare the evening meal for these soldiers. So it's 1 or 1:30 in the morning, and we are actually serving meals to various rotations of troops. And I had not slept on the airplane flight the night before. So by this time, I'd been awake about 36 hours. I was sunburned, jet lag, and kind of anxious. And as we are serving the meal, a huge race riot erupted in the mess hall. Black soldiers fighting white soldiers, and tables turning over, chairs flying, serving trays flying, and it just kept growing as a huge brawl until 5 MPs ran into the building with their M16s, and one of them fired 3 rounds through the tin roof, and everybody stopped. And the sergeant in charge said, all right, all you assholes fall out. And they were herded away in 2 groups. And I said, I looked at Sergeant Chen, he's the mess sergeant, I said, are they gonna arrest all those guys? He says, no. He says they're gonna yell at them and put them back on guard duty. And I said, geez, I don't know, that doesn't help me too much. And then we're cleaning up, we're picking up everything, we're putting it in order. And it's 3 or 4 in the morning. And I said, I didn't get it, but what were they fighting about? He says, well, he says, they've been out there on guard duty all night. They're probably pretty lonely. They may be high. He says, it don't take too much, and we got one wrong look, and we got ourselves a situation. He says, it's actually happened before. He says, all the problems that existed in America come to Vietnam with the troops. So I'm kind of feeling down. I'm kind of feeling depressed. I'm an infantry soldier, and I was kind of wondering what the first action of my war would be, and I'd already seen it, and it was quite a surprise and actually quite shocking. So the Sergeant Chen kind of took pity on me and noticed that I was pretty frazzled. And he says, you know, I got a guy coming by in a little while. He says, he might have something for you. I said, oh, I'm not sure what that means. So we're outside the mess hall, and sure enough, here comes a guy. And he's got a pipe and a bag of marijuana. And we are all smoking marijuana together outside the mess hall. And for about 5 minutes, I did relax and I did feel comfortable, and things were going good. And then 3 MPs come running around the corner of the mess hall with their pistols drawn, and one of them has his .45 pistol pointed at my nose, and he's saying, you're under arrest for smoking marijuana. So the 3 of us, the mess sergeant, Sergeant Chen and his buddy, and myself, are marched to the jail at Cam Ranh Bay, and that is how I spent my first night in Vietnam, behind bars. And so we're in there all night, and anyway, we're in our cells, and we're all right next to each other, and Sergeant Chen was next to, his cell was next to mine, and he would kind of tell me what was going on, and he would say, I don't think they got too much. I don't think there's much going on here, because I got rid of the pipe, and my buddy Whitey over there, he got rid of the bag, so I don't know what they're going to charge us with. So anyway, I finally found some sleeping on the cement floor that night. And in the morning, an officer showed up, and he said, you're all being released to await court-martial on charges of suspicion of smoking marijuana. So we stumble out into the daylight, and I'm kind of looking at the rat-infested replacement barracks over there, and they say, hey, come with us. So they were in the personnel company that did all of the sorting out of replacements. Feed them, take care of them, send them on their way to their various units. And they had brand new barracks. They had air conditioners in every window, and when they showed me the room I was going to be using, I was sleeping on a bed with a mattress, and for my entire year in Vietnam, that was the only time I slept in an air-conditioned room with a bed with a mattress. So I was living large. I was thinking, you know, this is actually a good thing, because I am not in an infantry unit. I am just doing what I want. I really have no assignment. And so when Sergeant Chen and his buddies were off duty, we would party pretty hardy, and just kept on going. And one night we're in one of the clubs they have for the soldiers. We're drinking beer and yucking it up and carrying on, you know. And Sergeant Chen comes over to me, he says, see that guy over there? I say, yeah. He says, that's the commanding officer of this entire base. That's the commanding officer at Cam Ranh Bay. And he's sitting in that corner, and he's watching you. I said, really? I said, look over there, and there he was. He's a high-ranking officer sitting there watching me. Couldn't figure out what was going on. A couple days later, Sergeant Chen comes to my room, and he says, I got good news and I got bad news. And he says, the good news is the marijuana charges are dropped. The bad news is the CO thinks you're the problem that we have here. He says he thinks you're the reason why his troops do drugs and carry on like they do. And he's anxious to get rid of you, because if he can get rid of you, then he thinks all of his problems with drugs and everything are going to go away. So he's just sending you out of here as fast as he can. So you report to personnel office, you got your orders, and you're going to be on a plane in an hour. And he said, one last thing. Don't tell anybody at your next unit that you got busted for smoking marijuana. That's not the impression you want to make in a new unit. I said, all right. So sure enough, I'm at personnel. I got orders, taken to the airport, their little air base there. I'm on a C-130. I'm flying north to Chu Lai, South Vietnam, and that's the headquarters of the AmeriCal Division, the 25th Infantry. Now, what you need to know about 1971 is in the last presidential election before that, Richard Nixon, the peace candidate, got elected with the promise that he was going to bring all the troops home from Vietnam. So all of the large units, all of the division-sized units of 12 or 13,000 men had already been withdrawn from the field or were being withdrawn from the field, and the AmeriCal Division was the last American infantry division in Vietnam in 1971. And I found out as soon as I got there that they were being withdrawn from the field, and they were within a week or two going to all process out of country and fly home. So the sergeant that met me at the Chu Lai Air Base is looking at me, and he's looking at my orders, and he's saying, "Why are you here?" He says, "We're done. We're not even in the field anymore. We're going home. The last thing we need is a replacement." And, so he's asked me, what happened down there in Cameron? How come you're here? And I go, I had made up this story. I said, well, they kept me over for guard duty, and time passed, and I don't know exactly what happened. And then they just kind of sent me up here. He's looking at me like, pretty sketchy story. He figured it out right away. I'm a terrible liar. And so anyway, he didn't know what to do with me, and he couldn't figure out how to get me back to Cameron. So in the Jeep, and he takes me to what used to be their large replacement barracks. And I was in a barracks designed to hold 40 guys, and I was by myself. I was the only guy in their replacement barracks. And it was right on the ocean, beautiful view. They had a bar right next to it. I went into the bar, I was having a few drinks. I'm the only guy there. Nobody in their replacement's there because, after all, they're going home and they don't need a replacement. So the next day, I'm in the personnel office, and I'm with the captain, an officer who's going to do the assignment of what's going to happen to me. And he's looking through my file, and he's smiling. And he's looking at me, and he goes, there's really no reason for you to be here. You must have done something down there in Cam Ranh Bay, right? I mean, for them to send you up here, it's just ridiculous because, well, I'll tell you what, if you had 2 months under your belt, we'd take you home with us. But you've been here 2 weeks and you're not going home. And it's going to take me a while to find an infantry assignment for you. What happened? Just between us guys. And he smiles and he's leaning over. Just tell me what happened while you're here. And I thought about telling the truth, but then I said, I don't know. I was held over for guard duty, and they just kept me down there for a while, and then they decided to send me up here, and I don't know, and he's looking at me, he's laughing at me, because he knows I'm lying. He goes, okay, he says, this is going to take a while. He says, in the meantime, report next door to the NCOIC, that's the sergeant in charge of the accounting department. He's got his hooch there, and tell him to find a place for you, okay? Because I don't even know what to do with you. So I report to the NCOIC. He's at the head of his little office there, and it's rows and rows of desks and clerks there. And he says, what? Find you a place? Why are you here? You're not even an accountant. We don't, you're all wrong. Why are you here? And I tell him the story, guard duty's on. He says, oh, that's pretty sketchy. And he says, I got a desk back there. Just go find a desk and go sit in it. And he says, I'll tell you what, keep your boots shined. If an officer shows up, pretend you're working, okay? And I'm kind of going back there, but then I say, well, okay, but what should I do? He says, do? He says, there's nothing to do. We have had the files all squared away for a week. Don't touch anything. And I said, all right. So I go back there, there's an empty desk. And every time he shouts officer, I kind of open the desk door, and there's actually some paperwork in there, like little forms. There's so many military forms. And I take out the little form and I pretend I'm filling out a form on some imaginary soldier, you know. And 4 or 5 days went by and it was pretty boring. You know, there was nothing to do. And it was very boring. So one morning, a colonel shows up. And he's got like 8 guys with him. And one of them's a photographer. I'm kind of looking up there and I'm going, oh, geez. You know, so I get out my form, I'm filling out my little form, and then I notice the NCO I see way up in the front. He's laughing, and he stands up, and he turns around, and he points right at me. He says, yeah, he's back there, that guy, back there. And I thought, oh, they found out about what happened in Cameron, and I'm in big trouble. I'm going to jail. I'm going to be put on court-martial or something like that. Something terrible's about to happen. So I get real busy on my little form. You know, I'm filling in every box and block, and I'm writing stuff that's gobbledygook. And here comes the colonel down the aisle, stops right next to me. His entourage stops right next to me. Didn't even look. I'm just pretending I'm working here, and he goes, Private Goswitz? I said, yes, sir. So I stand up. He says, congratulations, son. He shakes my hand, and he says, I have the honor to inform you that you are the last man in Americal. And we are going to have a small ceremony today honoring you, and by doing so, we will honor all those who have come before you. And I go, oh, well, I don't think that's necessary. And he says, yes, we're doing it. We're doing it. And at that point, the photographer says, Colonel, the pictures would go better if we went outside. And so he says, do you have time? I said, yeah, I got time. So out the door we go, and they shove me right next to the colonel. They put a plaque in my hand. The plaque had the crossed flags, American and South Vietnamese flags, the arm patch for the Americal Division, and a little etched engraving below it. It said Private Robert E. Goswitz. Last but not least, the last man in Americal, replacement number 98,744. And they took pictures of me. And that picture was in Stars and Stripes magazine, read by every GI from Tokyo to Saigon. And so then one of the aides says, the colonel's going to grill you a steak at the officers' mess. Show up at noon. I said, oh, I don't think that's necessary, you know, because I'm really sweating bullets here. I'm not sure what's going on. He says, yeah, he's going to do it, and you better be there. Report to the officers' mess at noon. So sure enough, I'm at the officers' mess at noon, and I'm sitting at a big round table with 7 high-ranking officers, and the colonel is grilling steaks for everybody. And, you know, I can tell in the conversations that's going on that these officers are kind of feeling sketchy about this situation, like they're not sure that this is really a good idea or that I'm a legitimate candidate to be honored for anything. And so anyway, the colonel's talking and asking me questions, and finally everybody gets their steak and everybody has their salad and drinks are served. And so I'm drinking a beer and I'm cutting up my steak, and I take a big chunk of meat and I put it in my mouth and I'm chomping on it. It's too big. I shouldn't have put it. I'm just anxious and I'm just doing stuff, you know, really worried about what's going to happen to me. And I look at the colonel who's sitting next to me, and he's crunching his salad, and then he stops, and I can tell there's like a question forming on his face. And he goes, so, Private, I'm really interested. Tell us how you became our last man. How'd you become the last man in America? And I go, you know, I'm chomping away. I still have this big chunk of meat in my mouth. And so all around the table, all the guys, they put down their utensils, stop talking, and you know, you kind of feel the tension building a little bit. You know, no one's talking, everybody's watching me, and I'm chomping away this big. Finally, I swallow it, and I go, well, Colonel, I could say a lot of things, but you know, it's kind of, I'm not sure exactly what happened. They put me on guard duty, and then they kept me on guard duty, and I kind of got lost in the shuffle, and then they sent me up here. And he has his whiskey rocks in front of him, and he grabs it off the table, and he says, and we're lucky they did. Here's to you, Private Goswitz, last but not least. And you know, the other guys, well, they got to lift their drinks up because the ranking officer's lifting his drinks up. And so it turned out to be actually, you know, a cool little ceremony. it was legit, and they were being honest about it. They were going to honor me as the last man in Americal. So that's how I went from being a guy in jail on his first night in Vietnam to receiving a military award I didn't deserve after 2 weeks. When it comes to all of my stories about Vietnam, I guess the person that I have to thank the most is my wife, the faithful Jody, she who knows my thoughts before I think them. She was my first listener, she was my first reader, and she was the person who encouraged me to take time as a retired teacher to actually write down my story. And then after 5 or 6 years of trying to learn how to write a book and how to promote a book, I got a literary agent. My literary agent is Jeannie Loicano of Loicano Literary Agency of Dallas, Texas. She got me my publisher, Black Opal Books, and I'd also like to thank you, the viewer, for taking the time to find me here and to listen to my story, and I hope it turned out to be a story worth listening to. Thank you.